Hi guys, welcome back to the IronManager channel, and we have here with us again Joseph Agu. Hi Joseph.
Hi mate, how's it going?
Very good, thank you for being here. And as you know, people who are following my channel knows, I'm literally 10 days from the NGA Universe in Coral Spring. So this bodybuilding competition. Joseph has been helping me a lot in you know, the preparation of this contest. You know, from my times back in India, then here in Berlin. You know, I basically leverage his very strategic and very important consultation in order to prepare this competition at the best. And now that I'm basically literally stepping into the peak week, so the final week of you know, the preparation before stepping on stage, I'd like to ask Joseph what are, you know, in his opinion, the three major things to keep in consideration you know, during these last 7 days before stepping on stage. We read a lot about, you know, sodium, potassium, water. You should cut water, you should increase water, cut sodium. What is the opinion of an expert nutritionist about how to prepare for the perfect peak week?
Yes, so first of all, the goal of the peak week really is so the bodybuilder or just general competitor should already have the desired amount of leanness. So that week isn't an extra week to lose any more body fat. They should really be at that sort of limit of body fat. So for a natural bodybuilder, that means striated glutes. That means no visible subcutaneous fat. So yeah, the goal there therefore shouldn't be to lose any more body fat. So the goal really of peak week is to accentuate the physique. So this is done in two ways. The first one is making yourself look bigger, so increasing the muscularity, and the second way is to improve the perceived conditioning. So getting that sort of shrink wrap look that people go for. And the reason why I say perceived is because the competitor, like I said, wouldn't be trying to lose any more body fat. They would just be trying to make the best of the physique they've already got. So in terms of making themselves look bigger, so the easiest way to go about that is to manipulate glycogen stores. So so for each gram of glycogen to store that requires around 3 grams of water to store it. So for every gram there, you've got 4 grams. So for a competitor with a decent amount of muscle, so like we discussed before this brief interview, you're talking around 500 to 800 grams of muscle glycogen content there to play with. So this in reality would make a difference in appearance and in muscle mass of around 2 to 3 kilos. So if you take someone who's completely glycogen loaded, depleted them, there wouldn't be that much difference between them visibly losing 3 kilos of muscle. So it can make quite a difference, especially when you've been dieting for 16, 20 weeks or whatever, when you're going to be quite depleted. So that would be definitely a strategy. And in terms of how to implement this, so it depends on the individual and their preferences, but you could front load the carb load. So say if someone's competing on a Sunday, they might carb load on, let's say, the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and split that intake of say 500 to 800 grams over those days. So you're probably looking at around 150 to 250 grams of carbs on those days, or even over 4 days. That would give you a little more room for error, because say if they tend to get slightly bloated towards the end of that carb load, and that's on the Saturday evening, and they're panicking towards the competition day, at least they can have a couple of days then to rid themselves of that bloat if they're doing a front load. Whereas if in your instance where you sort of do a trial run, like a dry run of the carb load in the peak week, then knowing that you can do a back load into that while sort of minimizing any bloat, whatever, then that would be an appropriate strategy also. So it depends on the individual, their preferences, whether they tend to get quite bloated or not. And I suppose one of the areas that we discussed with you in particular, because you're a vegan athlete, a lot of the protein sources, and because it's sort of like a carb a sort of carb source rich diet, so to speak, and there's a lot of sort of fiber and stuff in that, using like a low residue diet on the day before, on the days before competition, just so you haven't got that bloated gut, and that everything's pretty tight, and that separation is a bit more apparent in the abdominal region. So and then so that's in terms of making yourself look more muscular. So in terms of the perceived conditioning then, so maybe the second tip, if you like, is so one, being full will just help with that separation. There's tanning. So the main reason people do that is just so the lights don't wash you out on stage. It creates that illusion of that separation with the light and dark. So and like you said, in terms of water manipulation, I tend to err on the side of not really messing with water too much, but I think the most someone should really play with it a little bit is maybe increase it a little bit before the carb load, or even perhaps during, but then sort of reduce that down to around sort of just general sipping according to thirst from, say, maybe the 24 to 36 hours before the show. So in terms of amount, it's going to depend on the individual's habitual intake. So probably around 4 to 5 liters a day before the carb load, and then maybe just before upping that to maybe 50% more, and then reducing that throughout the carb load and towards a competition. In terms of sodium, I don't think there's too much reason to mess about with that. A lot of people cut sodium before the show, thinking that'll reduce the water retention, and it might to a degree. But if we look at what muscle is, it's going to be around sort of 70% water. So if you lose water from muscle, you're going to make the muscle look flatter. So you're basically kicking your shooting yourself in the foot, so to speak, by trying to cut water too much. And like I say, like if you're lean enough already, then water shouldn't be that much of a concern for a natural. For someone who's assisted, then it's going to be a completely different ball game, because they might have products that naturally retain water if they're more estrogenic compounds and so on. So they use illegal diuretics and just do sort of silly water cutting programs, do like sort of sodium loading and then cutting and things like that. But I think the sodium intake, it should be relatively, I think if you keep that relatively stable, it just gives you one less variable to consider, because playing with, it's difficult to tell what's going on when you start introducing more and more variables on top of that. So I think carbohydrate and water are plenty to try to manipulate, assuming you've already got a decent level of leanness before the show anyway. And in fact, sodium might need to increase during the actual show anyway, because if you look at some of the bodybuilding, the natural bodybuilding research, that the blood pressure drops quite drastically throughout the course of a cut, just because the calorie intake ends up quite low. And for most male naturals, actually, when they step on stage, the weeks before that, they're probably consuming only around the high sort of 1,000, so around sort of 1900, sometimes into the low 2000s. So it can, you don't want to really be sort of collapsing and feeling sort of faint. And I'm sure you might have had many instances during the prep where you've stood up too quickly and felt a bit faint and stuff like that. So, which is a sign that your pressure could be affected. So, so that would be my.
No, that's great. No, and
my tips with it. And I think more than anything. Yeah, I think more than anything, the most important thing is probably just to try things out, because people respond differently to different protocols. So just doing a dry run of things and seeing how things affect you individually, and then you can always sort of chop and change things and change one variable at a time until you sort of hit that sweet spot, knowing that you can sort of be optimal on the show. Because you hear all the time people reporting that they look better the day after the show because they go out then and they have a proper meal and they've sort of filled out the glycogen, and they feel tighter and they've got that increased muscularity and so that's a sign of a bad a bad prep. So you really want to get the most out of the sort of carb load, and then whilst not sort of spilling over in bodybuilding speak and sort of causing that some bloating and potential water retention. So yeah, just in terms of a quick roundup, that would be my sort of go-to. But yeah, I'm sure you'll get me on in the future, and we can hit things in a little bit more depth and talk about some of the specific research as well that has been published. I think there's around half a dozen or so studies now around this, and I think all that research has come out in the past sort of 4 or 5 years. So there's plenty to talk about there.
No, yeah, thank you so much. I mean, I don't want to hold you too long because I know that you have another call at 4 o'clock, and we spent a bit too much time, talking about, catching up and talking about, my last, few days and, the peak week and how to prepare, the peak week at its best. I would say that, yes, I mean, I totally agree. And also from my experience, I mean, this is going to be my 14th competition. There's nothing you can do during the peak week to change completely your physique. You should get to the peak week when you are very, really lean, as you said, and ready to step on stage. And probably a good idea, as you said, is just like to manipulate a bit carbs and water just to improve the game of illusion of bodybuilding, so look bigger and more vascular, more striated. But the entire preparation for me also, through your consultation was really trying to get as lean as possible and as ready as possible for this competition as early as possible, so we could basically do the peak week with chillax, relaxing, and actually have fun on that stage rather than fainting or just feeling very dizzy and tired because maybe too low sodium, too low water. So I'm looking forward to stepping on stage. It's literally just a few days, so we're gonna be in touch again because, as I already revealed to you, I have in my plans also another competition right after this one, 1 month after. So we're definitely gonna do another call and maybe just deep dive into some of those topics because I know that there are a lot of questions about peak week and contest preparation. But for the time being, thank you so much again, Joe. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, no, you're more than welcome, Fran. It's always good to catch up, and I'll speak to you before. But best of luck with the competition. I'm sure you do great. I've seen the pictures already from the sort of mock peak week, and yeah, you're looking in great shape. So
thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure you do great.
Thank you, and thank you for your help as well throughout the entire preparation. We're gonna speak soon.
Yeah, no problem. Take care, mate.
Thank you. Take care.